Hello, and welcome to today's live reading from the Mastermind, WaterFyre Rising Book 1 by Nadia, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Prologue, Remington. I'll be hanging with Grayson and Royce after school, I lied, grabbing a blueberry muffin from the kitchen island. We're working on a school project. I'll be back on Saturday. My dad, stepmom, and stepbrother sat behind the marble island with eyes on their cell phones and tablet. No one replied to my comment as they sipped coffee, drank juice, and nibbled on muffins and waffles. I could move in with my friend's family, and they probably wouldn't even notice my absence. I slipped on my backpack and headed out the front door. "Don't you want to wait for a ride to school?" Dad asked. "Nah, I'm going to walk. It'll save you time since you have to drop off Brian." I attended a private high school 2 blocks from my home, while my stepbrother went to a different private school where one of his mom's friends worked. She never asked if I wanted to switch schools. I didn't, but the offer would have been appreciated. "Don't forget your chores when you get home," Mallory said with a forced smile. I hated her fakeness. When Dad wasn't around, my stepmom transformed into a witch. Ignore her. "I've got a pile of dirty laundry if you need something to do," Brian said before shoving a piece of waffle into his mouth. I hoped he choked on it. At 17, he was 2 years older, but he was the most irresponsible, spoiled brat I'd ever known, and I knew quite a few from school. "I'm not your slave. I have a big science project in the shoebox next to my hamper. Don't touch it." Leaving the house, I smirked. I couldn't wait to come back and see Brian's face all red from a rash. You see, Brian thought he was smarter than me. I knew what buttons to push so he'd do exactly what I wanted of him. If he were a decent person, which he wasn't, he'd leave my stuff alone, but he enjoyed messing with me. I had a surprise waiting for him when he opened the box. Poison ivy and poison sumac were gifts for troublemakers who didn't respect people's things. I also made sure my deck of magic cards was lathered with poison ivy. A bully gets what he deserves. Hey, it was his fault for not listening to my warning. I wasn't lying when I said it was a science project. Everyone heard it. Instead of walking to school, I took the city bus to downtown Providence. It was Friday, the day I played hooky. There were 2 weeks left until summer vacation, and the teachers didn't care. I didn't have any major exams, and even if I did, it wouldn't matter. I was already enrolled at Yale for the upcoming fall semester. I took up 2 seats on the city bus, one for my backpack. A few dudes dressed in jeans and t-shirts sat in the back. Taking out my black journal, I reviewed the intricate plan for my future. As the bus moved, I stared up at the top floor of the brick building that overlooked the Water Place Park, where the annual WaterFyre event took place. I used to see people standing outside on the balcony looking down. It must have been awesome to view the braziers on the river from up there. When the bus stopped, I hopped off and wove my way through crowds of people going about their day. Passing a couple of guys eating hot dogs for breakfast in the street, the guy with the huge scar that slashed from his forehead down to his cheek met my eyes and nodded. I'd seen him a few times when I skipped school to meet up with my friends. I nodded in return and went on my way, heading to the Church of Compassion. No one paid attention to me, probably thinking I was a college kid. At 15 years old, I was already 6 feet tall, taking after my dad's height. "Yo, wait up!" Grayson rushed up to me and smacked my back. The same age, he had short black hair and stood 2 inches shorter. He attended a rival private school. Last year, we bonded during a basketball game when my school lost to his by 20 points. "I made a map of our world," Grayson tapped his red backpack. It sounded weird, but my video game buddies had become my second family. They understood me. "Let me see how your drone turned out." Grayson stopped at a bench and dug into his backpack. "I modified mine a few days ago from a video on YouTube." Grayson's red drone had black designs and looked like an abstract spider. I took my silver drone out of my bag. I'd spent a lot of money buying the best parts, including taking online classes to improve the design and functionality, but it was well worth it though. I'd saved money for my side job, a job I'd learned from watching my dad trading stocks and bonds. I was an excellent observer and grasped concepts easily. My dad didn't see it that way. "Stop paying for video games. You're wasting your life. I need you to focus on your academia." My dad's words rang in my mind as I watched my drone soar in the bright sky. I am focusing on my academics. I built this drone that would help me build my empire. "Video games are for losers," my hypocrite asshole stepbrother had said. I caught him several times playing video games, among other things, in the middle of the night. I won a drone contest held by Yale, and my super high Mensa scores opened the doors, and Yale offered me a full scholarship. Hell yeah. I wouldn't turn down a free ride. It was the perfect escape from my shitty home life. Dad was glad because he didn't have to pay for college. Mallory and Brian seemed happy because I'd be out of their way. No one in my family knew I'd be making bank from trading. I didn't even need to attend college, but I wanted to. I wanted to prove to them I could do whatever I wanted. I wanted to prove to my mom, my real mom, that her son was worthy. Hey! Royce arrived, flanked by Forrest and Arrow. They lived on the other side of Providence, deemed dangerous. That never bothered me. We all met through RPG games. Check out the intelligent flight mode. Arrow attached his tiny controller to his phone and pressed a button. The drone lifted and hovered, barely making a sound. All right, let's do this, I said. We each take a street and record whatever we can from the bird's eye view and other angles. Our WaterFyre Rising game is going to be the bomb, Grayson beamed. Sounds good. We'll meet up at the church in 20 minutes. We all scattered. 20 minutes later, my friends and I walked up the steps of the abandoned church where we held our WaterFyre Rising Club meeting. We entered through a boarded window we had discovered a while ago. We kept it hidden from the homeless people who often slept on the steps. I didn't want them taking over our clandestine office. Making our way to the entrance, we heard voices from inside. Who the fuck is in my office? I turned to my friends and held a finger to my lips, then gestured to the stained glass window with the crack. We climbed up on the brick balcony using an old chair someone had dumped on the property. Bang! 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 I froze. We all froze. Were those gunshots? My heart raced and my legs wobbled. I looked through the cracked window and saw a man tied to a chair. His eyes were wide open, staring up at a man wearing a black hoodie. 3 other men stood around the captured man, but I couldn't see their faces from my angle. Bang! Another shot rang out. My body shuddered as though the bullets had gone through my chest. Concerned voices from my friends yanked me back to the moment. I jumped down from the balcony, scraping my leg. My friends joined me on the ground and we ran for our lives. I heard a male voice shout something, but ignored him. Footsteps sounded, but they could have belonged to my friends and me. I didn't dare stop to look around. A man appeared in front of me and held up a hand, blocking my way. My heart jumped to my throat when I recognized the slash on his face. He had been eating a hot dog earlier. Had he been in the church? Slash looked at me. You didn't see anything, he said in a thick accent. You didn't hear anything. He clapped a hand over each of his ears. Tell no one, nothing. If you do, they will find you and they will kill you and your families. Understand? His jaw pulsed and I couldn't look away. He placed a hand on my shoulder and I jerked, meeting his gaze. Comprende? Si, Forrest nodded beside me. Gracias. We spent the night at Grayson's house, trying to gather ourselves. Audrey knocked on the door several times, but Grayson kept telling his little sister to go away. Nerves still jittering in my body, I wiped the sweat from my hands onto my jeans. We were all on edge. Our lives were at stake. We didn't know who those men were. Were they part of the mafia? Who had they murdered? We sat in silence as we downloaded the recordings from our drones to our laptops. My heart dropped when I realized I'd captured parts of the murder on video. Chapter 1. Audrey. Nerves rattled my stomach like a broken blender, churning anxiety by the second. Ignoring the sensation, I reapplied my pink lipstick, cleaned off the mascara smudge under my eyes, and fixed the flying strays of my long black hair. I straightened the red pencil skirt and evened out my white blouse with the blows and leaves. Glancing at my reflection from the handheld mirror, I huffed a stressed sigh. I looked presentable and was ready for my meeting in human resources. HR was like a high school principal's office. No one enjoyed going there unless they had an issue, and I had a major problem. I tucked the mirror back into my office drawer and rose from my chair. Noises erupted from my stomach, and I could feel indigestion rising in me. I rubbed a hand over my tummy. Behave now. I dug into my purse for an antacid. This happened every time I got super stressed. People reacted to anxiety differently. For me, I got stomach aches. My stress level had increased since I started working at Lafayette Marketing as their marketing director. Yoga and breathwork classes had been helping the past year. Frustration raked its claws down my back, but I willed myself to calm down. The corporate world was a political playground with obstacles full of sharks and unexpected turns. A year ago, I resigned from an ad agency in New York City and moved back to Providence, Rhode Island to work for a smaller company, not wanting to deal with the stress that came with working for a large corporation. I grew up here and loved the atmosphere. What I didn't realize was I had exchanged one hell for another. My complaint to Human Resources had been ignored until 2 days ago when they agreed to meet with me. Their excuse was the HR manager had been away. Bullshit. I saw her every single day for the past few months. If they were going to lie, they could at least make it believable. How long did they think they could stretch out this issue? It wouldn't disappear on its own. Did they think I'd quit and leave? I'd thought about it. It would have been a lot easier to just leave, but if I did that, my boss, Lawrence Lafayette, would win. He'd been harassing me for the past 3 months. I wasn't raised to let a man touch me without my permission. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't paying attention." He'd said that the first time he bumped into me in the office kitchenette. I had felt a hand on my ass, and when I whirled around, he apologized profusely. Stunned, I didn't know what to do. This staggering incident had never happened to me. My gut reaction was to slap him, but he had appeared genuinely mortified, so I had given him the benefit of the doubt. That had been a mistake. From that day on, Lawrence made inappropriate comments during my one-on-one meetings with him. He'd ask about my choice in lingerie and if I had a boyfriend, none of which were his business. When I told him to stop and that I'd report him, he just shrugged. "You're a smart girl. A smart girl doesn't make up stuff about her superior unless she wants to lose her job." I thought about finding another job, but why should I be the one to leave? I hadn't done anything wrong. If anyone were to leave, it should be him. Being the heir to the company didn't give him the right to be a sexual predator. Grabbing my journal, I stepped out of my office and headed down the hallway filled with framed ads the company had worked on. My Jimmy Choo heels clicked on the tiled floor that glittered under the light. Each click sounded like a bomb ticking. I wasn't sure if that symbolized Lawrence, me, or the entire situation. Nerves rioted in my stomach, but the antacid kept it in check. I took in another breath to calm myself. I didn't want to appear nervous. That would make me seem weak and vulnerable, which would give them the upper hand. Walking toward the Human Resources Department, voices boomed from the glass conference room across the hall. A particular voice seared through the air and clung to my body, making my skin tingle. My eyes landed on Remington Starke, my brother's best friend. What was he doing here? Was he hiring Lafayette marketing for his businesses? Should I warn him? Aside from Lawrence's fiasco, the rest of the agency proved their worth. Tall, with short brown hair and an athletic build in a dark tailored suit, he cut an elegant and powerful demeanor that became the focal point in the room, in any room. His face possessed a stern look that added to his mysterious appeal. Remy exchanged greetings with the CEO, George Lafayette, and walked around the conference table. Like a graceful panther, he moved with purpose and careful precision. Why couldn't I take my eyes away from him? Remy had a quiet magnetism that drew people to him, including me. From what I knew about him, he was an enigma most people wanted to understand, but feared. He was the enticing package no one could figure out, yet they couldn't keep help wondering what was beyond the magnetic façade. A man like him complicated things, but most women liked mystery with a dash of danger. As for me, I was taking a break from men. The man making my work life hell was enough danger for now. I didn't know why I wondered what it would be like if Remy brought hell down on someone. It would probably be a lot worse than Lawrence's style. A child prodigy, Remy became one of the youngest billionaires to grace the cover of Forbes magazine. If he used his brain to target a competitor, I had no doubt he'd crush his enemy. I hadn't seen him in a while. The last time I saw him was 6 months ago when he visited my brother Grayson to discuss some video game project. We'd exchanged brief greetings in passing. Remy turned and met my gaze. For a moment, the air seemed to pulse between us. My body heated as though he was right beside me. Okay, that was weird. Lawrence had messed up my brain and body, confusing me. I shouldn't respond to any man like this, never mind Remy, my brother's best friend. Remy nodded, and I gave him a wave and quickened my steps. Out of sight, I took a moment to shake off the strange sensation to concentrate on my meeting. I squared my shoulders, straightened my back, patted myself to ensure I had everything in place, and walked straight into Human Resources. Audri Wu was no longer that shy girl from high school who found comfort in corners, reading books, creating jewelry, and daydreaming. I assumed every young kid experienced the same dark path of trying to find their place in the world. Like most kids, I survived my childhood, had my heart broken several times, and moved on. Now, at 28 years old, I knew who I was. I was a woman with a vision and dreams. No one could take that from me. No one was allowed to pressure me, especially a man who used his family name like armor. I walked past the copy room, and Lawrence emerged like a coyote waiting for me. He sent me a sordid smile and licked his lips, making me want to slap him. Looking good, sexy. Please address me as Audrey. I'd undress you any day, he winked. Asshole. In my mind, I stabbed my pen into his smiling eyes and watched as blood streamed down his face, marking his white shirt. Then I stabbed him in his crotch, taking my time while his screams for me to stop became a cheerful song to my ears. I didn't think I was a violent person until he entered my life. Anger stirred. Focus on the task, Audrey. Do not fall for this taunt. Ignore him as much as you want to slap him. I pressed my lips tightly together so I wouldn't say anything that could ruin my case. I love the shape of your ass and that red skirt, he emphasized a squeezing motion with his hands. Keep talking, jerk. You're out of line, Lawrence. You're rude, and I want you to stop harassing me. I love how you say my name. A sleazy smile crept onto his face. You're lucky you're Audri Wu. If you were anyone else, I'd take you so easily. He raked a creepy gaze down my body, then slid back to my glaring eyes. Let me remind you, this is my company. I own everyone working here, including you. If I retaliated in public, I knew he'd twist the truth so it would harm me instead of him. Like he said, it was his company, and I was playing on his turf. I had to be smart, even if every fiber of my being wanted to kick his balls and dig my sharp heels into them. God! See? I'd turn into a diabolical woman with vicious thoughts. I gritted my teeth, shoved the coiling anger down, and pasted a fake smile on my face. You need a reality check, jerk. With that, I hurried off. I could feel his eyes blazing into my back, which made me walk even faster. I arrived at the HR conference room, blew out a breath, and rapped my knuckles on the door. In my mind, I wished I had rapped a fist into Lawrence's face. Come in, called Tracy Coleman's voice, the human resources manager. I entered and faced Vice President Susan Lafayette. Tracy sat next to her. I hadn't expected Susan's presence, but I supposed she'd want to hear what I had to say about her spoiled brat.